Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Raising the Volume. I am Ray's dad. I am Jordan's husband. I'm also Marcus Amaker, artist in residence emeritus at this lovely Gilliard Center. I'm here with the current artist in residence, JaMeeka Holloway, and I'm excited for you all to get to know her. I guess I should ask what your pronouns are before we start this.
She, her pronouns.
Okay, cool. I didn't want to
Yeah.
assume anything.
Absolutely. I love that. I love how you introduce yourself. I'm Allie's mom. I am Demetra and Jackie's baby girl, and Sarisha's sister, and Caleb's auntie, and very, very excited to be in conversation with you, artist to artist, and fellow human. Truly excited.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, so I was telling you before all this about how I was doing some light, stalking of you online,
I
and
love a little sleuthing.
super impressed with the range of work that you've done. How you've really done some really amazing, like, subversive work as well. There was one thing that I saw. It was a William Shakespeare.
Oh, yeah.
Black women reading William
Othello.
Shakespeare.
Oh, Black Girls Love the Bard, my baby. Yeah.
So I have always talked a little bit of ish about Shakespeare, but it's interesting to flip that and
Yeah.
see it through a different lens. So this might be a strange way to start, but how can we just talk about that? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
such an interesting and unique show. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, sure. So I come to Shakespeare with really wanting to sort of conquer one of the I won't call it a fear, but something that I've always sort of kept myself from, because I never really saw myself represented in Shakespeare in any mainstream ways. And as a woman, as a woman from the South, as a poor woman from the South, as even a mother, just never was able to, like, sort of see my particular self and experience represented in that work. And there, at some point, I was like, I can't let that stop me from engaging this interest and this curiosity that I have around the work, his worlds, and the practice of Shakespeare. And so I applied to be an assistant director at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, and did not think at all that I would be chosen, and having to get that assistantship. And it really opened my eyes to all of the work that people were doing around Shakespeare, and wanting to make it more inclusive, and not wanting to make it more inclusive because we want to reify the icon of Shakespeare, but for those reasons of, like, representation and making sure that folks are able to see themselves represented across the American theater. And so the ways that I engage Shakespeare is always around how we decolonize, how we reframe it, so that at its core, it actually holds the humanity that everybody says Shakespeare's work holds. It's like, oh, Shakespeare, he illuminates our humanity, but whose humanity has it historically illuminated? And so that we could really add some truth to those statements, I offer my work to the Bard. And I think that because of Shakespeare's recognizable name, it offers more opportunity for us to get into rooms with power players, people who can shift the dial on social and economic change because of his familiarity, right? And so there's some ways that we're going to be able to shift the dials of conversation with Shakespeare that a contemporary playwright right now can't, because of Shakespeare, because of that icon status. And so what a better way? Well, there are lots of better ways, but how about tracking this particular avenue in to shaping change in literary, theatrical, and dramatic art forms through placing marginalized communities inside of that work, and not only putting them in the work, but allowing them to contextualize how they sit inside the work. So for me, it's never Romeo and Juliet as we've seen Romeo and Juliet.
Mm-hmm.
It's Romeo and Juliet as a black queer woman would play Romeo. You know what I mean? Well,
Yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean?
right on.
And so really allowing folks' lived experiences, their backgrounds, cultural expertise to come in and contextualize and like rejuvenate and give new life to Shakespeare. And I'll tell you the ways in which like that work and the text opens up for me when I see somebody like me put their stank on it. Like it just, I'm like, oh, this is Shakespeare. This is what I think Shakespeare would have wanted too. And I think like scholarship and elitism has sort of cloistered Shakespeare and has decided that Shakespeare sits here on the shelf. And I don't for a second actually believe that that's like what Shakespeare would have wanted. Like Shakespeare wanted, like the work that he did it for the folks that he calls the groundlings, the people who could only afford the tickets, like right in front of the stage and not their box seats. And so Shakespeare wanted to bring it to the people.
Yeah.
And so much of my work too is about like bringing it to real people, not just theater people, not just art lovers, not just music lovers, but people who have no idea what it is they love yet because they have not had the opportunity to really be exposed to it.
Yeah.
And so there's so many ways in which I think societal norms keep us away from stories that have the potential to really enliven our perspectives on the world and on storytelling. But we have the opportunity to find our own autonomy in the ways that we look at these stories, and the fact that Shakespeare's work is in the public domain. That means you don't, like, as an artist, like I don't have to go for rights, pay for rights. So like that accessibility like really draws me to the work, and because it's in the public domain, like I can rip and deconstruct that work from top to bottom and rebuild it in ways that feel good for people. And so it actually is this exercise for me in imagination building and creativity and like how we imagine, because I think a lot, and I'm so excited to like talk to you further about this, about all the ways that through our artistic practices we get to imagine the future, right?
Yeah.
And shape change and like how we see the future. And I think what we get the opportunity to do with Shakespeare right now is take these stories 400 years old, give new life, futuristic qualities to it. And I think it is a way, an activity, exercise for how we imagine like the future of imagination and creation and building stories. So
it's beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, and it speaks a lot to Shakespeare's work that it can be used that way as well. Because I feel like the job of artists, particularly black artists, is to really, just sort of like reshape, reprocess a lot of the ways that we were taught these works, and actually be like, okay, like we can have this as well, and it doesn't mean that it's separate from anything, but the way that I was taught, a lot of it was that it was this like elitist sort of thing, and I'm like, okay, so that was why I never
I look at it like a music cover. Like Whitney Houston, she covered Dolly Parton's, one of her biggest hits that she wrote, I'll Always Love You.
Yeah, right on.
And the way that she rearranged that song, I mean, she made it fit her voice and her persona. And I think that's exactly what we do as artists, creative artists, when we take these historical, literary pieces of work and put our own feel on it. It's the same as a cover, to me anyway. It's like the same idea of covering and rearranging a song and bringing it to a new generation or to a new demographic of people who may not have listened to that song before if Dolly Parton would have sung it. And although I love me some Dolly Parton, there are lots of folks who never would have heard that song if Whitney Houston hadn't covered it. And so for me, I'm always just thinking about what the opportunities and the potential that we have with story. And again, there's some rooms that Shakespeare's gonna be able to get into, and we know that all of that like has to do with like white supremacy at the end of the day. But however, he's gonna get into those rooms that right now August Wilson, even in all of his glory and majesty as a writer, won't be able to get into because of systemic racism. But how can we like what's the angle? How can we use that in some way to continue to forward our own agendas? In terms of racial equity and visibility and representation.
And it's a beautiful thing. Like I think about just history in and of itself and the way that we can present history in new ways. And the Robert Smalls production is definitely one of those. I'm super proud of what's about to happen. Can you tell me a little bit about that and your journey with that
Oh,
so
sure.
far?
Yes, yes, yes.
Hopefully it's been a good
I
good journey
mean,
because y'all can plug your
well,
ears if
we
it's
are
not.
in the thick of rehearsals right now, and this week just started to get actors up on their feet. So I'm in the room, obviously, and then a good friend of mine who also is an amazing collaborator of mine, Tristan Andre Parks, who I suggest would be a great person for you to interview as well.
Notice so.
Yeah, I think Sterling's already on that. But we're in the process of processing right now, and we're getting actors up on their feet. We're getting storytellers up on their feet. I think it's also so important. I'm also really also trying to challenge my use of language, and I think actors also sort of put us inside of a box. And I love this idea that we are storytellers. And I think like that just makes it more inclusive, because like my introduction to storytelling came from the Black church and came from my aunties and my uncles and my daddy and listening to them banter. And so like I became a storyteller before I was ever introduced to this concept of acting. And so even now I try to challenge my vocabulary around it, and we're storytellers. But so as we're in this process of storytelling right now, and building these worlds, building this world out for the stage, I'm also wanting to translate this entire idea of how impactful the bodies and the labor of Black folks have been to this entire architecture of Charleston. And so what you'll see in this world is not only us telling the story of how Robert was born enslaved. We want to tell the story of the ingenuity of these enslaved people and how they were the prototype of so many of these systems of organization and ease and assembly. We always credit Ford with the creation of the assembly line, but like Black folks were being innovative on plantations across this country for years before it was ever categorized, with any scholarship. And so part of what we're doing in this story of Robert Smalls is not just telling the story of Robert Smalls, but telling the stories of the people and the communities that would have shaped him, in his early years, and that would have been the enslaved folks that he grew up with, whether it been his mom working at the McKee House in Beaufort, or where Mr. McKee had his plantation, Ashdale, on Ladies Isle.
Yeah.
They were innovators and building worlds, and even thinking about the folks who were enslaved on the docks, where we meet Robert in his early 20s throughout the play too. Once again, like they were not just working the docks; they were engineers, skilled workers. You know what I mean? And so, really being able to lean into their use and understanding of technology, even without a vocabulary for it, this sort of innate and ancient understanding of building, which we know, so many civilizations existed in on the continent of Africa before transatlantic slave trade. And so this is like muscle historic memory that they were bringing to these American shores. And so to be able to really show the precision in which they work, not just the labor, because we all understand the oppressiveness for the most part. We all understand the oppressive nature of the institution of slavery, and also like how it led into Reconstruction and Jim Crow. But I don't think we need to oversaturate this story with highlighting that. Okay. What I want to do is like highlight all of the beauty that came out of these situations, and the songs that grew from working song, like whether it be like dock songs or spirituals on the plantation, or even like hand games that we see that originated through Gullah culture. I really just want to, for me, like the story of Robert, it's not only about Robert Smalls. It really is about like the ingenuity of the cultures and the people who shaped him, the women who shaped him, his mother, and her passing down traditional Gullah, stories and oral histories to her son. I mean, and we don't have any fact to show that, but there's no reason to think about like the shape of Black culture now for me to believe that she was not passing those things down, right? Yeah. Beautiful. And throughout history too, I think we always and during these time periods, women always sort of get placed in these auxiliary roles. And we want to really highlight his wife as a corroborator.
Hmm.
of this commandeering with him. Like she
Yeah.
was not an afterthought. Like Hannah probably planted a seed somewhere. And that's one of the things that I love so much about us being able to be creative with history. And Octavia Butler is one of my
Oh,
favorite
Octavia.
writers. And so I'm
Octavia
like
is
really
beautiful.
into creative fictions and futurism and us being able to shape the worlds that we want to see. And
Hmm.
so as a director, I also call myself a story shaper. Because that's what it is. I get a story and then I shape it for the stage.
Yeah.
And I think in so many ways, Robert's life was shaped for this destiny of commandeering.
Right on.
And that is what I want to be highlighted in the story that folks see when they come see the journey of Robert Smalls, Finding Freedom, the journey of Robert Smalls.
Yeah, thank you for the work that you're doing because I think a lot about this. I think a lot about how black stories are usually only from an angle of trauma. You know, it's usually just trauma, trauma, trauma. I've seen some things that I will not name, but talk
Yep.
to me after this.
I
But
know what you're talking about.
that people are like, "Well, this is great," and I'm like, "That was a lot for me to hold. That was a lot to process. There was a lot more to us than the trauma that we went through that we still hold." And I think it's beautiful that you're doing this work within the theater world because I'm doing operas now,
I love that.
and it's the same thing. A lot of times, operas, the operas that you see that involve black characters, it's a very like traumatic story, and I've been asked to write things, and I've said no to a lot of things because we are much more than that. And even enslaved Africans who are superheroes, I think, for the stuff
Superheroes.
that they did, for the energy that they brought to America. Like I talk about this all the time, but you know, enslaved Africans invented the banjo. So
Yes.
even like bluegrass music.
Oh my
like,
God,
that is
folk
us.
music.
You know.
Yes, yes.
So it's just like the ability to find love, to find find that resiliency in the middle of a horrific,
Oh my goodness.
experience.
Oh my goodness.
Is really an amazing thing. So I'm
Oh.
I'm glad that there's a focus not just on the trauma. I mean, that needs to be told.
Absolutely.
But there's so much more to these people than
Absolutely.
that. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, and it's also so important too that when we think about Robert Smalls, so much of what gets told is about the commandeering. And so much of what we want to do too is tell the story of the man, right? Like tell a very human story.
Yeah.
And so what we'll see is sort of the ebbs and flows of a hero's journey. And part of that is like it's being fearful. And then you conquer a fear, but it does not negate the fact that at some point you were scared or discouraged or did not feel worthy or up to par. And I think in order for us to tell this story and to tell it right, we also have to pinpoint all of the ways in which Robert Smalls was just like us, just
Yeah.
like anybody else, just like any of these students, these magnificent students and young folks who are going to come see this show. I want them to really be able to lean into all of those like humanistic qualities, right?
Yeah, right on.
And yet he persisted, but notwithstanding the fact that he still had to conquer fear and insecurity and not having enough money and not being able to have, to have desire or the closeness and the intimacy that he would have loved to have in the early years of his wife, marriage with his wife, before they were free. And I think we'd be remiss to only celebrate the triumph without also leaning into what it takes and what it means, like all those things again that just sort of unite us in humanity. Those emotions that we all know. We all have imposter syndrome sometimes, and like ask ourselves whether or not we are worthy of the tasks that we feel like have been handed down to us, or that we've inherited, or even that we want for ourselves. It's just so important too that we don't just celebrate the feat, that we celebrate like what has led us to it.
Oh yeah, word. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, and a lot of white folks don't understand just the how history has been taught to us through the white gaze. I mean, we know all these stories of Lincoln, of Washington,
absolutely.
Jefferson, and it's so frustrating when I became aware of all of this and just really started reading some stories like Denmark Vesey is an American like superhero story.
Hero.
Like I mean, he was fighting for his freedom.
Truly.
And it's so interesting that, and interesting might not be the word, but how some people want to not tell those stories, and I'm like, this is a superhero. This is an American story. If
It's
you
an
want to
American.
fight for your freedom, what is more American than that?
Oh
You
my
know?
goodness, it's the
Um,
crux of our history as a
yeah,
country.
I mean,
Yes.
that's just what we are.
Yeah.
But so this is another thing that I meditate on a lot is I read this book, Rest is Resistance.
Oh, is this the Nap
Um,
Minister? Is this Trisha Hurst?
Trisha,
Yes,
yes,
I
Trisha.
love
Woo! Yeah,
the
so
Nap Ministry.
yeah,
Yes.
so that really opened my eyes to what I, knew subconsciously was that, like we also need to rest.
Yes.
Like we have this as an artist. I know that I feel this responsibility to tell that truth
Absolutely.
in a gentle way, but also be truthful. But just let folks know about our whole history.
Absolutely.
But it can be exhausting as well, which is why I watch a lot of Star Wars and play Xbox. What do you do for
I love that. Yes. Now that you mention it.
What do you do for self-care?
Oh, okay.
Because like we
so
can't.
many things. So because you bring up like your Star Wars love,
Yeah,
I
we can
also
talk
have
about that
to
for hours.
to bring up. I mean, I Lord of the Rings and
Oh,
the
word.
Hobbit trilogy.
Yo.
Really, my
All right.
go-to
All right.
respite. I will put on the extended versions.
The extended
The extended versions.
Yeah, the box set was like this.
Yes, absolutely. Like, because I mean,
It was
I don't
heavy.
like it was heavy. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I mean, VHS when it first came out, and
Yeah.
and just let it play in the background of whatever I'm doing.
Mhm.
And there's something about Gandalf the Grey and Frodo and
It's beautiful.
Samwise Gamgee that just do it for my soul.
Beautiful.
And it really just is like it just provides these genuine pockets of just rest and like ease for my mind that I
Mhm.
don't get often. And then I also I love to do things like go get my nails done.
Mm.
And like in Charleston recently, when I've like needed to find pockets of rest, I've gone to like check out all the beauty worlds. Like I'm Googling all of the beauty supply stores. Like
that's
I
interesting.
really like wear the lip glosses and the ear, because it's just something very like cultural about that for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean it's just something that I love, and spending time truly with. I still am that girl that in the midst of like doing in all of this work that I do that I think really transports me outside of my comfort zone. I still like that girl that like will pull up to my cousin's house and play spades with the family.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I'm
I
still like a
understand.
cookout. I'm coming. I'm driving 4 hours away to make the baby shower.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
right
to
on.
really still
Yeah,
stay
that's cool.
and allow my work to not disrupt relationship for me is very revolutionary, because I feel like so often like we're taught that our work has to our personal relationships have to suffer in some way, or we have to sacrifice portions of it in order to really thrive
Do this work.
and
yeah.
this business. And I know that there's slight truth to that. And I believe we can imagine and then live out the lives that we want. And I am not allowing this work to disrupt my relationships anymore. And so on a Sunday at 3 p.m., I'm not responding to your urgent email, because I am
Me either.
spending the day watching The Hobbit with my 9-year-old.
That's beautiful.
And it is like unnegotiable, and
Yeah.
that's like part of like what rest means for me.
Yeah.
To not be in this state of chaos with every single ding that comes across my phone.
Yeah.
I gotta answer it. I gotta get to it. Actually, we are only 12 hours away from 8 a.m. on a Saturday. I mean, on a Monday morning.
Okay. Yeah.
We
yeah.
are 12 hours away from 8 a.m. on a Monday morning. It can wait.
Yeah. Boundaries.
And just like boundaries is like where I find rest as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I mean the toll that I think sometimes the work can take, physically, personally, relationship wise.
Yeah.
I question often like how worth it is. Not to say it doesn't have worth, but how worth it is it?
Yeah, isn't it wild when you step into that power? And because like because I've done this a lot. Somebody will ask for a meeting to talk about the meeting, on Zoom, And I'm like, no, like I would, rather not. And then, the response might be weird, but I'm like, I can do that.
I
I
can
can
do
say
that.
no, and the work will still get done.
Absolutely.
And it's not, the website will be fine.
We'll be
Everything
fine.
is gonna be fine. Yeah.
Yes, and those
It's so
moments, I
interesting.
think, when the phone goes off and I don't run to it, I know that's not lost on my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's not lost on her that my mom made a choice
Yeah.
to actually stay present with me in this moment
Yeah. Yeah.
rather than take off to answer an email that could or could not really shape the way that I'm engaging with her then.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I like gotta stay in a moment of like playfulness with my child, and I can't let it be disrupted by the work, the urgency of a thing,
Mm-hmm.
because this, like, nothing holds more urgency than this life that I've been given guardianship
Mm.
over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I feel like doing that shows the person who's sending the email too that they don't need to be sending the email so often.
Absolutely. You raised
On a
too.
Saturday, I'm like, no, it's Saturday.
It's Saturday. Go have
No.
a mimosa.
Yeah, chill.
Chill.
I do want to ask you about your origins and just I know that we are so many things. We are not
Yes.
just what we do,
Yeah.
but obviously theater is why we're on this stage right now.
Yeah.
So what was the first moment that you remember of loving
Yeah.
theater?
I always
what was
love
that?
this question because I always love uplifting this name. But I was in tech theater in the 7th grade, and my technical theater teacher, and I love to mention that he was my technical theater teacher. He wasn't an actor or director, because I think it's also important that we recognize the influence too that the folks who are behind the scenes like have on the stage.
Mhm.
And his name was Daniel Dieter. He was a white man, and rest his soul. But he gave me Fences by August Wilson, Wedding Band by Alice Childress, and the second Mrs. Tanqueray by Arthur Wing Pernero, which is a old English problem play.
Okay.
But he gave me August Wilson and Alice Childress, and it really opened up my eyes. I had no idea that black folks existed in career and profession in the arts.
Wow.
In that way.
What a gift.
Until like
What a
these
gift.
books like were sitting in my hand. I'm like, plays written by August Wilson, Alice Childress, who's also a South Carolinian, by the way. But it
Where's
really
her
just
statue?
enlivened I'm like, black folks write like and get paid and are respected for it. It was
And we get paid.
mind blowing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that really piqued my curiosity. And then I got into plays. I think the first play that I did on stage was Guys and Dolls, and I was like a streetwalker, something like very auxiliary, very like ensemble, and all
Yeah.
the dance numbers kind of in the back. But it really was like the opening avenue that has like now pipelined me
Oh, it's
to
beautiful.
this work. And yeah, my theater teacher from high school, Daniel Dieter.
Daniel Dieter.
Yeah,
Bless
like this
you,
will
Daniel
forever
Dieter.
be sketched in my heart.
And it's
Yeah.
what I think is wonderful is you are doing that for other people too, because unfortunately, we still need to normalize this whole
Absolutely.
experience. There are black people in theater, black people in the arts, and we get paid.
And we get paid, and you can make a
Imagine that.
career and a profession out of this, y'all.
Yeah,
Doesn't have to be a hobby.
Yeah, I mentioned that to all my students. I'm just like, you can be an artist for the rest of your life, and you can get paid for it.
Yes.
It is work.
It's work.
It is work.
Yeah,
It's
but
not just like magic is gonna come. No, like it's contracts. It's it's answering emails. I mean,
Administration.
it's
yes.
taxes.
Absolutely. It's taxes, that part.
I'm like a
As a
trauma
freelancer,
response
the
here.
trauma.
Let's not talk about that. Yeah. So, is there anything else that you'd like to speak on as far as the Robert Smalls, show, or anything else that you're working on?
I think I'd be remiss to not mention all of the other beautiful creatives who are making this possible. Folks who are friends of mine and collaborators who I hope will be forever collaborators with me. But Kathy A. Perkins, who is a scholar, and I call her a living legend. She has been a lighting designer in this field for years, and her love for mentorship and and for her care around the plights of the next generations of artists has been tremendously inspiring for me, and I think has also helped me to cultivate my own desire for mentorship and to build that into my practice, right? And not just something that we do on the side, but mentorship has got to be like who we are in the room as well. And although there's a lot of like technique that we want to press, also like caring about like how we apply this individual to individual is very important. I never treat everybody in my room the same way. I've got to get on the level of all of the different backgrounds and the different vantage points of everybody who's in the room. And so I think we make a mistake like having a one blanket approach. And so to really be able to tailor it to people is a skill that needs to be honed more. But Kathy and her ability to really tailor her relationships, her mentorship to the person and to their desires and who they are, has just been incredibly inspiring and aspirational to me. Celeste Jennings, who's doing costumes design. I directed Celeste's play. She wrote a play called Citrus her senior year at Dartmouth. It was her senior thesis, and then we went on to have a world premiere of that play in Vermont, and we really have grown, and I'm a big sister to Celeste, but we've really grown creatively and as collaborators over the last couple of years. And so I've watched her go from strength to strength, like as a 19-year-old at Dartmouth to now like working off Broadway. It's beautiful to watch unfold, and I'm so excited about what will come next for her. Tristan Andre Parks, who's our movement director. I met Tristan. I was an assistant director on a show he was working on his first year MFA at UNC Chapel Hill, and it was a show, Detroit '67, and really talked about the race riots in Detroit, and it was being directed by a white woman, and so who just didn't have the cultural context to really lead the conversations around the show. And so Tristan and I spent our first day exchanging looks. And it was just like, and it was a love connection like from then. And then Amesia Balaams, who is our scenic designer, who really came in and like energized this space, this stage. I'm so excited for folks to see what she's done and the symbolism and the ways that she's been so inspired by Charleston in the metal work that we see across this city that was developed by the hands of enslaved Africans, that you'll see reflected on the stage here, and then like patchwork things that I can't give it away, but I'm just so excited for you all to see like the symbolism and how it's being infused to the play space. And Joseph Amode, who is doing media and projection designs. Oh God, there's so much that I want to share about that too, but I want to also be a surprise for the audience. But I am made better and stronger through the work and the collaboration with these people and the cast. They're like, so many of them have said, JaMeeka, we've never worked like this before. We usually come in a room and it's like the director tells us what to do and we get to it. And for me, my ego is not in this. I'm a storyteller. I care about stories because I understand how impactful they will be. I mean, when I was growing up and we could not afford to take trips and to get passports and to, to visit like other cities 30 minutes down the road, books took me there, stories took me there. And so I am a true believer in the power of live stories. And so for me, my ego is not in it. Again, it's all about story. So I don't need to have like the best idea in the room. I'm so happy if our 12-year-old Aiden has the best idea in the room, then that's the idea you're going to see show up on the stage. For me, it's, for real, it's about like what we stand to do with the stories we tell, not who tells it. Not who's at the helm of every single idea. So I'm the cast and the creative team. I am sitting on the stage right now because I'm empowered by the work that they're doing right now. I can take this moment to talk with you, Marcus, because people are in the shops and working on choreography and scouting out locations for us to shoot some media. I'm able to be here and to find this moment of true like rest and intimacy that I really appreciate, through this conversation. But I'm able to do that because of the work that they're doing. And I'm filled with gratitude.
Yeah. I can hear the passion in your voice, and I can see it in the way that you're moving too. Like, this is going to be a really great thing, and I feel like there's a lot of trust there too. It feels like a good energy.
Adrienne Marie Brown, who I brought these principles into the room, Emergent Strategy. I don't know if you're familiar with this book, but Emergent Strategy. She's also, this book is very inspired too by Octavia Butler and these ideas of Afrofuturism and us redesigning the future. But one of the things that she uses as one of her core principles of Emergent Strategy, she says, if you goodness, I'm going to say it wrong, but if you trust the people become trustworthy.
Oh, word. All right.
And because we have to be the change that we want to see in the world.
Yeah.
So if we trust the people, we allow them the opportunity to become trustworthy.
Yeah. We
can imagine out and live out the lives that we want to live, but we've got to do the doing first. Like we've got to do it first.
Yeah.
And then it becomes, because we get to create these worlds. And so I want to create, I desire to live in a world where trust is at the crux of creative process, because that has not always been my life as a creative. And so being able to make sure that my room just sort of holds space for everybody to become trustworthy is so crucial to process for me. So I could talk to you all day, Mark.
No, I'm all good. And I could sit here all day and hang.
Yeah.
I would love for you all to see this. We'll put some information about getting tickets and more about JaMeeka in the description of the video. Anything else?
Thank you, Charleston.
We can talk about Lord of the Rings.
We can talk about Lord of the Rings. But thank you, Charleston, for embracing me. Before we came on, I was sharing with Marcus that I feel like I am a granddaughter of this state. And my grandmother is from Clarendon County, Davis Station, Santee area, Sumner County. So these are all places that we would hear talk about as we were growing up. And so I just feel so grateful that this state, my grandmother's home state, has welcomed me with open arms, and that I come here not as a visitor, but as somebody who belongs. And I'm just so grateful that the city and the people that I've gotten a chance to work with and interact with so far have really helped me center that feeling of belonging. And I know my grandma's thanking y'all.
It's beautiful.
So thank you.
That's beautiful. I just felt that spirit. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for that. I needed that.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you all. This has been amazing. Yeah, we will see you on future episodes of Raising the Volume. See you all soon.